So in this video, I'm going to show you how to upgrade the Mod 1 to the latest firmware and auto height detection chips, those kind of things, to give you the latest Mod Q manager added with features that we'll talk about in another video. So what we want to do though is we want to go ahead and open up this side panel. We're going to open up the back of the mod, and we're also going to open up the side of the mod. In order to do that, we're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. We actually need a pair of snips, because we're going to actually cut a wire, a diode. We need a tool that's going to be able to pry the chips off, or on this here, we actually have a bolt that we pull off of the side panel that can be used as well. And this is a 5mm hex is what you're going to use for that. To pull off the side panel, we're going to need a 2.5mm hex as well. And then on the back, we'll use a Phillips screwdriver and a regular screwdriver. So what we want to do first, though, is we want to turn the system on, and then we're going to take a look and see what firmware we actually have on the printer. So we're just going to turn it on, and it's going to load up here. And this tells me I have version 7.11. So we're going to upgrade it to 7.26. So we're going to go ahead and power it off. And at the same time, I'm just going to go ahead and pull the power on the back of the mod as well as up on the top, because I'm going to turn this around to get a little bit better access to go ahead and change it over. Now, I've already removed a lot of the panels just for time on the video. On this panel, you're going to use a Phillips and then the 5mm Allen key or the hex. And we're just going to pull this panel off. On this board, what we're looking for is right in the center. It's going to say Mod 2 V8, so it's a version 8. If that is not on there, this upgrade will not work for you. It'll probably be a version 6 or 7, and it would be down in the corner instead of in the center. So make sure that it's like this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to remove this W chip. We're going to replace this firmware chip, and this there's an S chip right here, and there's a D13 diode. We're going to clip that completely. So let's go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, this is the little kit that it comes with. You see we have our AHD version, the latest version, an X chip, an S3 chip, and our firmware, and a couple wires. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this tool and we're going to pry it in here. Now on each of these clips, there's actually, we don't want to go to the very back because it's a socket. So if we look at this one up here, we don't want to get behind it. We want to go in between this socket brace and the chip itself. So what we're going to do, we can use a tool like this, or like I said, this little bolt right here that we find on the bottom of this panel, we can actually just put it right in here and pry it off. Now make a note also, on all these boards, you see like a little half circle right here. This half circle will always go in the same direction for every chip. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this little bolt, and I'm just going to take it, and I'm just going to pry like that. And then we're going to go on the bottom as well, or pry it as well. So now it pops right out. We're not bending the feet. Now what we want to do is when we touch these, we want to try not to touch these. But when we handle anything like this, we want to ground ourselves. So what I want to do is I just want to touch something metal so I'm grounded and I don't have any kind of static buildup. So I'm going to take this 726 chip, that's the latest in this video anyway, and we're going to make sure the half circle is up above. And if you look here as well on the board, when you see where the socket is, it should also show you a half circle somewhere on that ridge, so it shows that you're lined up. Now make sure when we put these in that these are going to be parallel and they're all going to fit nice and snug. If not, we'll have to kind of slightly bend these. And in order to do that, we can actually just take it, flatten it, and just kind of roll it a little bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make sure that the first pin has to be in the first hole. If we put them in incorrectly, we could actually blow the chip, and that wouldn't... we'd have to send a new kit. So basically everything's lined up. We're going to go ahead and just push it in nice and firm. Now the W chip, again, we could do the same thing. We could take the little bolt if we wanted, And we're just going to pop it in here like so. Now with the W chip, we're not actually going to replace this chip. What we're going to do is we're going to use a jumper wire. So we're going to take one of these wires here. It doesn't matter what color, doesn't matter what size. But basically, instead of tell you which one of these pins, the correct name, all we're going to do is we're going to count. All we want is this on the left-hand side, and we're going to start from the bottom. We're going to want 1 and 3. So it's be 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to jump a wire from here to here. All right? So that's all we're going to do. So I'm going to put one wire in there and make sure it's nice and snug. And then we're going to take the second wire. I'm going to go ahead and push that one in there as well. Again, just make sure it's nice and snug. All right. So it's number 1 and 3 from the bottom left. Work your way up. The next thing we want is, and I'll use this tool since I'm already here. We're going to take this S chip, and it should be an S3 now, and we have it marked as such on the chip. And we're just line it up and make sure the half circle is up and all the pins are in. And we're just going to snug it in there, make sure it's nice and snug. Now the last thing we want to do is we want to take our snips and we're going to look at this diode here, and we want to make sure it's on the D13 diode because that's what we're going to clip. So what we're going to do is I'm actually just going to take this and I'm just going to clip it right here. And I'm going to just take it, I'm just going to clip it off all the way. I'm just going to remove it. And then that would be it on this panel here. So we could go ahead and close that up. But normally what I would do is test it before we close anything up. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take the X. Now, if you have ink already, you can take your ink, put it in a box, and then just set it on top. Make sure there's nothing plugged in. And then I'm just going to rotate this. Now I've already removed the back panel, again just for sake of the video. Now what I want to do though, is I want to show this right here. So if we want to take a look, this is the board that we're going to be working with on the inside here. Now there's two things we're going to be doing. We're going to be replacing this X chip right here, and then we're going to put another jumper wire on this right here. But the jumper wire is going to be, let me grab my pin here. So basically the jumper wire is going to be on 3 and 7 if we move from the top right down. So it would be from 1, 2, 3 right here to 7, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's what we're doing. We're going to jump from 3 to 7. And then we're going to do that right here on this board. In order to get to the X chip, it is a little bit easier to have a tool like this. But again, if you don't, you can kind of work your way in with the bolt. On this board, it's not marked as well, but it's right here. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of pry up this X chip and kind of remove it. And again, the same thing. All the chips have a half circle moving in the same direction. All right. So we want to make sure that when we put the new X chip back in, it's in the half circle is in the same direction that we removed it. And if you don't remember what that is, again, every socket has a half circle on it. So we're going to go ahead and just put that back in and make sure all the pins are in the right location and none are worked off of the socket, but they are all going to be slipping in. And it's a little tight in here, but once you have it, I'm going to go ahead and bend the edge a little bit before I try it again. So once we have it in here and it seems to be good, we're going to go ahead and push down and we'll just confirm all the pins are in. And the last one is this. Now this one here has already been jumped, but again, as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And again, this is from the top right, work your way down. So this is 3 and 7. Okay? Okay, there's one last thing we want to do that wasn't covered in the beginning of the video is we're going to replace this C chip with the jumper wire as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to pry up this C-chip here. You get right under it. Kind of try not to bend the prongs. And what we're going to do is we're going to go pins 3 and 6. And this wasn't covered either on the front of the video, but when you count sockets, you start at the top left and work yourself into a U shape. So it's pins 3 and 6. So we're going to say 1, 2, 3. We're going to put that in there like that. And then we're going to go 4, 5, 6. So they're going to be straight across from each other. So it's going to be up from the bottom. It's going to be the second pin on both of these. Now that's that. And then one last thing we want to change is our AHD. Now if you turn that system on and the AHD said it was anything larger than 704, it'd probably be 708. Chances are it's 704 or lower. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we replace that. Now to get a little bit, I'm going to move the side panel, and what we're going to see is this chip right here. And this is, we want to replace it with the latest, and again, at the time of this video, this is 708. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 2.5 millimeter hex or Allen key. We're just going to simply remove each of these. Okay. And now we have, down in here, we have a panel. Now you can see this one, we kind of did this earlier and we went ahead and wrote this. But again, we have the same thing. We want to look for the half circle on the socket. We can see they're all on this left side. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to replace this with the updated chip that I have the correct label on. It's a little bit harder to get into, so again, that's where a tool like this really does help. And this one is, again, we're going to go ahead and make sure all the pins are lined up. They're in the correct holes. And then we'll go ahead and press down on this. Now be careful, we don't want to press, too hard. I mean, because this board is not secured underneath, but we want, and it's got to be hard enough where it's going to seat properly. But again, we just want to make sure that all the pins are incorrect. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and power it back on because we want to make sure that all of our chips are working properly and connected properly. If they're not, we'll have to power it back off and make sure. So we're going to go ahead and put this back together real quick. Make sure anytime you remove cables, we want to make sure that these cables are nice and secure. If these data cables are not secure, you may have problems with your printing. So all we would do is just go ahead and plug it in, tighten it up really good. And everything's good. So we're going to take a look on the front panel here as soon as we power this back on. HD 708, and everything's good. There'd be some kind of error. It might say HD fault if the HD was not working correctly. But at this point, everything is upgraded. And in another video, we'll show you how the new ModQ Manager works and the additional features.